All right.
Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank Podcast. I'm here with Mr. Matt Drew.
Sup?
Now, Matt, a long time ago, there was a news reporter named Nancy Drew. Do you remember her?
I know about the mystery author or the girl that was in all the mysteries. That was the character in a lot of novels and things like that. But yeah, that's the only famous Drew I think there is out there.
Maybe I'm thinking of Nancy Grace.
You're thinking of Nancy Grace, I believe.
Oh my God, she was terrible, man. Let me tell you about marijuana cookies. I was like, oh, please turn her off. I think that's the thing that gave me anxiety back in the day. Like I'd seen Chucky, I had seen Freddy. That didn't compare. I was afraid of Nancy Drew in your closet.
No, Nancy Drew is a sort of a snoopy little girl that's featured along with like the Hardy Boys and a lot of other sort of uh, young teen investigators and things like that. So much more pleasant than Nancy Grace.
A lot kind of to what you do, a little bit of curator of mysteries, I would say.
Yeah, that's kind of the title that has been bestowed upon me. I have been working with Straight Up Strange Productions. They are sort of a network of podcasts that focus on the weird and the strange and basically anything that falls under the sort of in search of slash unsolved mysteries category.
Now, what exactly in specifics are we talking about, or what have you found out? Because I'm a big proprietor of Bigfoot. Does he fall into that category?
Bigfoot is definitely at the heart and soul of all of those mysteries. Everything from the Patterson Gimlin film to modern day sightings and keeping track of those. And everyone has their theory on Bigfoot. And along with Bigfoot, we talk about UFOs. We talk about strange events. Um, everything from weird weather events like frogs falling from the sky, or we'll talk about serial killers or strange disappearances.
Which do you
Talk
find the most, I guess, which do you find would be the most fascinating for you? Like the ones you really like to stick on? Like for me, if I'm looking up cryptids or I'm looking up aliens, I'm going to stay a little bit away from aliens and dive more into cryptids because I like the monster aspect of things.
I'm definitely a cryptid guy. I have been inspired and for a long time followed a lot of podcasts like the Kryptonaut podcast and Astonishing Legends and other podcasts of that sort that will dive into Jersey Devil, Mothman. Um, but then the fun part is to get into the really, really weird and odd ones. That
Like the Pope
there,
licking monster. You ever heard of that one?
the Pope Lick monster is, I think, is sort of like a goat man
It's
or
the
something like that.
It's the dumbest cryptid in the world. It's like its layers above like a bridge that is just a train track. So it's the only like cryptid apparently with a death count because the only way to you can't really survive if a train comes on the bridge when you're on the bridge. So people just jump off. I'm like, this one's weird, and you give it a name that has nothing to do with the Pope. Because initially, I'm trying to research cryptids. I come across Pope licking monster. I'm like, there's a monster that lives in the Vatican that licks the Pope when he goes to sleep. Like when you're laying down and your dog comes up and just starts licking your toes. You're like, what the hell is that?
Well, I think it just bears the name of the town, which is very, very weird, which is Pope Lick, I guess is the name of the area. But I'm from North Carolina, where we have a number of very oddly named places. One of them is called Erect, is one of the places in North Carolina. I think there's another place called Dirty Ankle. It's just got, if you search through your atlas, you're going to find a lot of weird places. But bridges in particular Um, there's a lot of stories that old bridges have. I mean, just where I live, I think there's at least three bridges that have some sort of haunted ghost story associated with them, or monster. One of my favorite bridge stories is the Bunnyman Bridge, where apparently there is a serial killer slash crazy person in a bunny suit that apparently is supposed to attack people that cross under the bridge at night. And I don't know if it's some guy that was playing the Easter Bunny and just went nuts and, got a cleaver and started killing people. But there's a whole legend about that. And that's in Virginia. I think it's near Commonwealth University or something like that. But there's a lot of fascinating folklore and a lot of other things that we delve into.
Do you really entertain these ideas, or are you in a belief of some of them? Because I mean, I'm not saying that it's not believable, but there are some of the cryptid ones where I'm like, that just sounds like a load of crap. But there's some I've done my own kind of studying with, like Bigfoot, because I did a podcast on them, and the Yeti separately. And it was weird to me that these two things everyone considers like folklore, just myth or whatever, um, they I mean, this is back in the age before technology devices like text messaging, email, any of that stuff. Yet not probably before carrier pigeon. But in the United States and North America, there was sightings of this hominid gorilla type thing like Bigfoot. And then also in the Tibetan mountains, there was another one that had differences apart. And I'm like, these two places had no communication with each other, but they were describing borderline the same thing, which really sparked my interest to be like, how the hell is that possible? So that makes me believe that that's real. But then with like the Jersey Devil, that one, it's hard to really believe that a kid was born and had hooves and flew out of a chimney compared to what the X-Files was saying. It did scare the shit out of me. I'm not going to lie. I was afraid to walk to the bathroom by myself, and I did have a nightlight. I will admit to that.
Well, you know, the wild hairy man myth, uh, it's a deep rabbit hole to fall down into because pretty much everywhere you go, there is some sort of local legend that involves, you know, wild hairy men. There's Native American stories of women that were abducted and taken into the hills by wild hairy giant men, and then you've got other cultures all over the world, India to places in England and um, even places in Africa, South America, Mexico, all over Canada. Whether they're down in Florida and they're called the swamp ape, or they're up in the Pacific Northwest, and you've got Bigfoot, Sasquatch, you've got the Almas, which is a South American one.
The only type
Um,
of big hairy men I know are the ones at my gym that have like shoulder, like they have body hair on their shoulders, and you're like, you're wearing a sweater.
yeah, there are definitely those. Had thought about the theory that I don't know if you've ever seen any of the old school freak show pictures and things like that, but they've got these pictures of people that have this rare disease where they have hair growing all over their body, and they would go under the nickname the Dog Man or the Wolf Boy or
The guy that
things like
drank the
that.
blue iodine stuff and his skin turned blue. There was a movie about him, but that was an actual person, an actual case. A dude was drinking this medicine or whatever, and it mixed with something, and it had this type of mineral or something in its and it reacted to his skin, turning it blue. And for the rest of his life, he had like this blue skin. Like if you ever seen the movie The Big Fat Liar, when Paul Giamatti jumps in the pool and he's covered in blue, that's what this guy had. I mean, it brings to a point. I think everyone has a fascination, much like yourself, with these mysteries, these beasts, these whatever, these fantasy type things that people want to call a fantasy. But like we get to see those at a carnival sometimes too, such as the strongman, snake boy. And sometimes they can be an abnormality in a birth, or sometimes they can be something that is genetic, or maybe something that they grew up next to and it caused them to have that for the rest of their lives.
There are a number of, if you just want to explore uh, the rare diseases and birth defects and things like that that people can have, and there's a number of people out there that have rare diseases or other things like that where their skin appears snake-like or reptilian, um, and you have to imagine that legends of these folks have permeated through our culture, and so you got stories probably dating back to close to even 500 BC and things like that, of just stories of wild people being encountered. And you have to think that maybe some of them may have had this disease and were ostracized by their society, and the only place that they could find peace was somewhere in the woods.
That seems like the
And
basic answer for a lot of what we do in society is we like to bring things that look close or resemble close to us closer, and push things that are different far away. And I think that would make perfect sense. Like if you look at like one of my favorite monster folklore, if you ever want to say it, is Frankenstein. This man that was brought back or whatever, and he was just, he just wanted to fit in. He just wanted to be a part of people, but everyone chased him out with pitchforks and torches. Pitchforks and torches, man, with a man that's afraid of fire. Like that might sound like a ridiculous story of folklore thing, but I'm like, there's been people that have been trying to bring people back from the dead for a very long time. Is there a possibility that maybe someone got the answer right and it didn't last for one time? Or, I mean, we have stories of these werewolf transformations, and Native Americans believed in shapeshifting into animals. I mean, whether you want to chalk that up to peyote or something that they were smoking, it's still interesting to learn about.
well, there are a lot of Native American stories. One of the more popular, famous ones is of the skinwalker, which is the creatures that can appear human. And there are some like stories of the Wendigo, and other stories of sort of cannibalistic creatures that will live out in the wild and may be able to imitate voices of babies in trouble and things like that in order to draw people out into the wild. There's a number of very famous stories of wolfmen and dogmen all over. A lot of those stories. I don't know if you've ever seen certain species of wolf up close, but they are large and they are terrifying.
Yeah, I saw a woman
Um,
that would pet them. Like she would pet these live, like wild wolves, like no training, none of that. And she would open up her mouth and let them lick inside of her mouth like kisses. And these things would snap right in front of her. And she was like, "It's best not to show fear." I'm like, "You're fucking nuts."
yeah, there's definitely wild aspects like that, but I'd say the really interesting stories out there are the ones that you've probably never heard of. One of the fun ones that I've heard of is called the Sandown Ghost Clown, which is a story from Europe. I believe it's in England, and essentially these two children come across sort of a clown-like, ghost-like, robot-like entity, which they have no frame of reference for describing. They just remember that it looked like it had empty eyes and an empty mouth, and it could put something in its eye and bring it out of its mouth, and it had some things like that. But there are tons and tons and tons of story, and the further you go and the deeper you dig, excuse me, there are just more and more strange things out there than you can even imagine.
When do you come across any of your information? Do you try and Google it? Because I know I looked up like for Bigfoot when I was trying to get as much information as possible. I went to all the organizations that were online, all the sites that were developed into them, and I tried. And they would link you into something else. Like they would link you into like, oh, you like the Bigfoot, maybe you'll like the Yeti, maybe you'll like Thunderbird, maybe you'll like this Mothman. And I'm like, all right. So then you end up diving down a deep ass rabbit hole where it feels like it's hard to climb out.
Well, my favorite websites for strange news, Mysterious Universe is one. They often do a number of different stories on a varied number of different topics. They'll, keep in touch with modern stories of UFO sightings or monster sightings or things like that. There's another phantomsandmonsters.com that they'll do a lot of personal accounts of weird stories of cryptozoological type things. There's another site called Anomalien, which I think is sort of a combination of the word anomaly and alien, and they do again a number of different stories to kind of keep up with, and I've gotten to know some of the people that will run some of the sites. There's like the Pine Barrens Institute, and their story, and then there's Tobias Wayland, who runs his own website and will do different stories that have been captured in the news all over the United States. So there's a number of different places to kind of keep up with, but you can, if you find the right resources, there's a ton of information out there
How do you
on
sort
anything
through the
weird.
how do you sort through the bullshit though? Like it seems like there's a lot out there. There's always somebody talking about I've seen aliens, I've seen ghosts. The ghosts is believable to me because I've seen some things I can't explain on my own. And I've talked to people that have seen some stuff. And I mean I talked to a dude that went to into a salvia trip where he spent 8 years living in a whole nother life, and he went in a Mormon, came out a stand-up comedian. So I understand that there's things that can change your perception, and there's things sometimes we can't explain, sometimes we can't feel. But when it comes to aliens, like the same questions get brought up. And I'm pretty sure recently that the government just told everybody that it was true, that there were actual sightings of these UFOs and these unidentified flying objects, and everyone just completely ignored it because of the whole fact we're dealing with a COVID situation right now. Everyone's like, I don't give two shits about aliens. I'm like, hang on a second. We tried to storm Area 51 like 6 months ago. I'm like, it would have been so easy if the government was like $20 ahead. You come in here, see the shit you want to see. See, we got clones of Morgan Freeman. I'm sorry. We didn't tell you before. We were trying to save you.
Well, I'll tell you, there are, you have to think about UFOs, apart. Sometimes you have to think about those apart from aliens because usually the two are so interconnected and linked. But UFO is simply unidentified flying object. I mean, literally, this is. I mean, all you have to have a UFO is say there's an object that's in the sky, and we as trained observers cannot identify what it is. And there are a number of potential explanations for UFOs, which could be as much as technology or spy um, drones and things like that, because there's a lot of talk about how we may have had drone technology way before people knew that we had drone technology and things like that.
That was leads back to the
um,
point of I found out Pittsburgh, those giant steel mill industrial cities. The reason why the factories are located where they're at is because of the weather. When it fogs up It's very, very hard to see from high altitudes. And back in the day, they thought that if there was somebody going to be spying from like a UV satellite or something, they wouldn't be able to see through the clouds or the weather to be able to tell where our factories were, so they wouldn't get bombed and we could still maintain production during war times.
Right. And I think that's where there's a lot of different stories. I mean, there's there one of the more famous cases that I like is there's a story about a family that encountered a UFO on the road one night, and it kind of floated there in front of them, and it flew off, and then eventually it was chased. They saw that it was being chased by the military in helicopters and things like that. And later on, the family ended up getting very sick and had a lot of um, evidence of radiation poisoning and things like that. Where this family, you can kind of tell because this family doesn't have really any reason to lie, and they don't have, doctors can't explain how they got the radiation poisoning. And this was one of those things that was explored on Unsolved Mysteries. And um, you know they had talks with the military about it, and the military tried to keep it very hush hush under wraps, and wouldn't come out and acknowledge it and
Why do you
try to
think
take care of the family.
Why do you think they do that? Because I look at it like the Area 51 situation is that they know that it's there. I mean, Ronald Reagan in one of his speeches hinted at the idea that there were aliens, that we're not alone in the universe. So he thinks we should be prepared. That's why we developed the center. I think it's the cancer study. It's the Cancer Study Center for something. It's like $50 million a year of our budget git's put into it. And it's just a small little facility with a couple of people that are monitoring the stars for extraterrestrial
You
activity
talking
or
about
any.
SETI?
I don't know if that's the abbreviation for it. I just know
Okay.
that there's a developed center that he established. And I'm
Yeah.
like, if our president established that, then you have to think that maybe he's right onto something. I mean, you have to look at all the factors. Is that the government has to keep us safe, in their opinion of safe is not letting us know what's going on. Because if I encountered an alien, I'm going to lose my shit. I'm probably going to be like, I have so many questions. The first one is, why are you obsessed with our asses and why do they always get probed? Probably because all the information's in there. So I might have just answered my first question. But then the second one is, why did they drop Nancy Grace off and not take her back with them? You know,
Well, there's if even if you just look back into the history of presidents and UFOs, that alone is a very interesting topic. There's stories about Eisenhower and how he mysteriously disappeared right after a number of UFO sightings, and kind of showed up uh, sort of strangely but he was missing for like 24 hours, and then they ended up finding him like on the other side of the country. And that was where he was, and what was happening with him was very hush hush. And there's stories about, was he meeting with aliens or things like that that were happening. Jimmy Carter is very famous for having a UFO encounter. Mr. Peanut Farmer has a UFO story.
wait, Mr.
Um,
Peanut Farmer, we're talking about the guy on the Planters Peanuts?
no, Jimmy Carter was a peanut farmer before he was president.
Okay. I learned something
Um,
new every day. I'm surprised I did not know that one out of all the useless information I have in my head, like how many types of birds there are.
But my one of my favorites is something I recently just put up in my posts and stuff. Is there's a story, written encounter by Theodore Roosevelt, where he potentially encountered uh, a Bigfoot-like creature, because he described an encounter with a wild animal, which you know almost kind of fits the description of a Bigfoot.
Was it before or
Um,
after his boxing accident?
That I'm not entirely sure
Because the
of,
one thing I really love
but it,
about Teddy Roosevelt is that he, during his presidency, was hit in the eye in a boxing match, and his basically disconnected one of his eyes, basically, so he couldn't like move it. It just went completely like one way, so he was blind in one eye.
I mean, Theodore Roosevelt, in my opinion, is probably one of my more favorite presidents, as I feel like he is the very prototypical badass president, because, he was one of those people that um, was on his way to go somewhere and to deliver a speech. Was someone attempted an assassination and tried to kill him. He had two bullets that went into him, and instead of being rushed to the hospital, he ended up traveling to and delivered his speech before he ended up, going to the hospital to get treated for those wounds. So he's the kind of president. He established a lot of our national parks and things like that. And he grew up from a very small asthmatic little boy, and was very much the definition of a sort of a self-made um, character. But he was definitely probably one of the more interesting ones. Now, funny enough, I don't want to go too deep into current politics or anything like that.
Go ahead if you want.
Uh, but I'm interested to see, 20 years in the future, 30 years in the future, what we are going to think about Donald Trump. Um, it's going to be interesting, as we look back, at George H.W. Bush, you know, um, I mean, a lot of people now, you know, are like, oh, I'd prefer to have him over Donald Trump. But if you look at Donald Trump's legacy, he's establishing Space Force, and now you have them coming out slowly about UFOs. It makes you wonder if he's slowly preparing us for
Well,
something.
what's really really interesting is the fact is there's always going to be two sides of people on this. There's going to be the sides of people that don't want change, and there's going to be the sides of people that do want change. There's going to be people
Hmm.
that want, I want to stick with Trump because he's our current president, we know him, I can deal with his shit, I've been dealing with it all these years. Then there's going to be the sides of people like, we need something new. If we don't ever try something new, then we're never going to figure out what could be better. But I say it's the same thing with every president that has either been assassinated, besides the one that have been assassinated, but the ones that have made it through office, they've usually been hated. Ronald Reagan wasn't very liked during his presidency. He wasn't liked until after his presidency. JFK wasn't liked during his presidency, was very liked afterwards. Abraham Lincoln, same shit. It's because you're used to what it was before and you realize you get somebody else. Everyone talked trash on Obama when he was in office. People still
Well,
kind
they're
of
still
do.
talking trash about
Yeah,
him.
people still kind of do, but now they rather have him than Trump in office. And it's like, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to keep flopping back and forth. But honestly, when I look at like a main question here for you is, do you think aliens have ever been here? And do you think that they ever will come here? Because I look at it with the world and how, especially what's going on right now, I'm looking at it like if anybody tested out Earth and see if we were ready by placing something here, it was aliens. Because, like, I mean, we've been fucking it up for a pretty long time.
So, this is gonna sound uh, odd, like an odd question, but or an odd thing to come back with. But the definition of alien, as we think of it now, is a biological being that has visited us from another planet somewhere in the solar system, um, which I think is kind of a very narrow view to come across when we talk about aliens, because a lot of people believe that what we think of as aliens could actually be something that's not of that origin or doesn't fit that story.
Yeah.
Um, my particular favorite theory on aliens, quote unquote, is that aliens are actually individuals from the future. That if you look at the stereotypical alien nowadays, they're all humanoid. They all have two arms, two legs, two eyes, round head, humanoid type figure. You know, speaking from a exobiologist point of view, to get that somewhere else in the universe is so rare. Like we can say, statistics say, oh, there will be life on other planets. But to have life on other planets that look like that have the bilateral symmetry,
It's one in a
that
billion.
have the legs and the upper body structure and the ability to communicate in that way, even if it's like telepathy or whatever, to be able to have like a brain like that and to work like that, it would be even beyond astronomical in terms of the likelihood.
Well, you got to look at it as if there is life out there. And then the easiest answer is there definitely is. To think that we are just the lucky ones that formed on this planet, that evolved, whatever you want to say, doesn't mean that it hasn't happened somewhere else in a different galaxy. There's so much we have left to discover out there. It's hard to think, like, why wouldn't you be prepared or just expect something to get here before we can get anywhere? We finally made it into fucking space. I guarantee you there is another planet out there or something with maybe a race just like ours, 1,000 years ahead of us, maybe traveling from the future. Technically, it could be like I don't know if you ever seen Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
That movie had me messed up for like 3 weeks. I thought we lost Matthew McConaughey and I was going to be 46 by the time he got back, because he was only going to be gone for like an hour and a half. And it just seeing that movie and then thinking, like, is there a way maybe time travel is just occurring different time zones, different time spaces? We have different time zones. Is it going to a different planet, being in a different time space where an hour there is 10 years here?
Well, we've had as you kind of mentioned earlier, we've had satellites pointed up into the sky and trying to see if we can get what apparently seem like intelligent signals from outer space. But there are so so many that we can get, that we could say yes, these were created, but they come from billions of light years away, and by the time they got from there to here, it's been a million years, a billion years. So thinking about the time span of which human beings have been around and have had the ability to communicate and to send things into space has been very little. And how many times have we come within a short period of time of destroying ourselves? So you have to think about that period of time in which an intelligent race could do something like that. It could be that they send that out, and it's quite possible that aliens or whatever is out there could pick up our signal, but we could be long dead and gone, and whatever, before that ever happened.
Can you just picture
So
two aliens showing up here and this place is just like a deserted wasteland? And they're just like, shit, I told you not to stop for freaking chili fries on your sandwich.
the reason I bring up some of that stuff is that that then says, well, if they don't come from space, where do they come from? And you have to think, if you have to kind of take away a three-dimensional, four-dimensional view of things, and you have to think about, well, I mean, there's the multiversal theory, there's alternate earths,
Yeah,
and
A theory, B theory, C theory, string of time,
so
all those
so
types of parallels.
could we see creatures possibly from an alternate reality or something of that nature? Or could we be seeing creatures that are so far, far into the future that are traveling back and studying us the same way that a archaeologist would study ancient cultures, or in terms of a lot of people make fun of it, but it just seems like aliens in a lot of stories are obsessed with sex and obsessed with sexual organs and procreation and all of that, where if you think about that, you know there's no way that an alien race would be able to procreate with humans or even be close to that, whereas if we had humans that were so far into the future that they something happened and they lost the ability to reproduce, and they have the technology to go back in time and be able to collect biological samples, and that they're trying to solve that problem at that point in their future, trying to solve the reproduction problem and things like that.
Bro, you just
um,
made me think of the reason why they're abducting us is for sex slaves.
it could be that they are doing studies and things like that. I mean,
I'd
it's
donate
quite
my sperm to some aliens, dude. Are you kidding me? If I have to save an entire alien race because they're like, hey, we need a small amount of it just so we can you repopulate all these eggs or fertilize all these eggs to save our whole
right.
entire species, would you do it? I'm like, yeah, just stay away from my ass.
Well, and and the a lot of times, you know you have to think that if aliens or people of the future, they would look at us the same way we would look at a Neanderthal man, or look at some earlier form of ape-like human, some proto-human. Um, you know, th- they're going to look at us very differently, as if we're not, the same. They're not going to relate to us the same. And you think about, UFOs showing up and being kind of incognito and whatever. You have to think, they may be trying not to pollute the time stream by basically being very incognito about, we're not going to show up, we're not going to appear before everybody in the government and whatever. And that could be the secret as to why the government is keeping information from us about UFOs, is that if we do that, we then disrupt the time stream.
I think they're
And
testing
then
us a little bit too. If you start to notice recently, like we're starting to get a lot more information about aliens, like stuff like more encounters or strange things that we can't explain. And I think it's because like, back in the day, like around maybe the like Roswell incident and all that type of stuff was like they thought that was going to be a good testing point. Like maybe they would be ready. And then next thing you know, something bad when happened, like, no, 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 they're not ready, give them time. Then now they're coming back again, like, let's test them out again. Let's test the water again, see if we want to dip our toes in and show them. Because I mean, with all the type of pop culture movies that happen to do with aliens and all these types of things, like one of the most interesting things that I find, which people consider a conspiracy theory, is the Men in Black. Like, I think that's an actual thing. I mean, there's been accounts and reports of people that would shave down their lips, shave down their eyebrows, everything that was a distinct facial feature, even dyeing their eye color and getting rid of their fingerprints and anything that just looked like they were wearing a rubber mask looked identical to the person beside them.
there's a lot of interesting Men in Black type stories out there, different accounts. A lot of them uh, sort of speak about how the Men in Black are not used to humaning, so to speak. That they, you might offer them a glass of water to drink, and they just look at it like, "What am I supposed to do with this?" Or they would be fascinated by just weird or odd objects in a person's home, like a clock or something of that nature. Would just completely fascinate them. Or they would eat really strangely, or breathe like they were gasping for air, or things like that. Um, or they wouldn't sweat on a really, really hot day.
You gotta think if they
Or,
file your face down, you're probably not gonna be able to do a lot of that stuff.
well, it's quite possible that, there's stories or theories as to the Men in Black, kind of being biological robots, so to speak, as that they're not, fully human, but they're kind of used as a way of, monitoring and uh, keeping secret certain things,
Yeah.
um, that, the one entity or another doesn't want the majority of the population to know about.
Would you think a
Um,
theory would be a good one that like maybe Bigfoot? I know people always talk about him being an alien. I think if anything, he's maybe some type of government experiment. I mean, there's literally I think it's an island, and God, where is it? It used to be like a giant government, I guess, radiation or experiment plant, and there are all these animals from years of radiation. Like nobody's able to live on it because
I think you're talking about Montauk.
I don't know if it's Montauk because that's the one that's from like Stranger Things, right? Supposed to
That's
be
the basis.
yeah.
That was kind of the inspiration for Stranger
There was
Things.
like an island in the Caribbean or something that is like completely like near the Galapagos, I think, and like these regular animals, reptiles, all these types of things were infected by the radiation that was there because they had a government plant that shut down, and they just ended up being like, you can't live here, it's like Chernobyl, and just went away. And apparently, like you can't visit there because like these creatures, like you're seeing like 10-foot iguanas or some shit. I read that a long time ago, so I might be wrong, but I thought that was
Yeah,
interesting.
that's not ringing any specific bells or anything like that for me. But as far as Bigfoot theories and things like that, Bigfoot is a mystery because there are sightings of Bigfoot, that go back. If we just look at the 20th century,
Don't do that, Timmy. You're hurting me. Don't do the quotation marks on the Bigfoot.
well, it's because I only do that because people conceptualize Bigfoot in different ways, because some people think Bigfoot is intelligent. Some people feel like he's more, or it's more animal.
Yeah.
And is there one Bigfoot, or are we dealing with families? Because that's the story that some people have when they've encountered uh, Bigfoot type creatures.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is the story of Albert Ostman, who he was a Canadian prospector, I think, and he went out into the wood, into I can't remember where it was off the top of my head, but he came back with a story about how he basically got attacked in his tent by a family of Bigfoot, and that he was abducted and taken, like literally he was in like his sleeping bag, and they like basically grabbed the bag and pulled him back, and were like dragging him into the woods and whatever. And there's also Ape Canyon, which is a story about a group of Bigfoot, monsters that started attacking this one cabin, um, and they, had these rocks that they were tossing at the family. But when I say Bigfoot in quotation marks, it's because I'm. It's sort of like when you use the term Bigfoot to, like you say, Loch Ness monster.
Yeah.
Like when everybody says Loch Ness monster, everybody thinks of a plesiosaur, which is the long neck
Yeah.
thing, kind of, looks like a brontosaurus but with fins,
Because that's what
kind of
they've shown
popping
on
out of the
TV.
water.
They've
Right.
shown that version of it on Nessie, which is what they call it.
Right, and that's why I would say, with air quotations, because that's kind of the popularized conception of what it looks like or what it is. But with something like Bigfoot, um, there's legends, like I said, that go back all the way to the beginning of, we'll just say, the 20th century, because I just posted a sort of an infographic where it showed which states in the United States had the most uh, sightings, and then the years as it went up, and you could slowly see Washington just outpace everybody else. But what I think with Bigfoot is that Bigfoot, a lot of people could say he's a tulpa, and if you're not familiar with
You
what a
believe in it so much you conjure it up that it is real.
so if you're familiar with the TV show or the book American Gods, it's sort of like that, where because so many people believe in a thing, it actually manifests and becomes real.
That's the scary
Um,
part about creepy pastas. Like I feel like the Slenderman talk and how big it got at one point. I was like, you can conjure that thing up and make it real.
oh well, I mean, there's Slender Man. There's
If you tell me Slenderman's real, I'm gonna lose my shit because that
no,
game freaked me out so bad.
yeah. I mean, if tulpas were an actual thing, then I would definitely think Slender Man is has become a thing. But one of my favorite recent sort of ones is Siren Head. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I've heard of a
Um,
siren, but I've never heard of a siren head.
so it basically is a very tall, lanky, sort of humanoid being which has either one or two megaphones as its head slash mouth. And it is usually pictured out in like the middle of the woods or some sort of rural setting, kind of possibly taller than or about the same size as a tree or something like that.
If we're just creating shit, I just want to create a cryptid that is gonna when he's about to kill you or whenever he opens up his mouth, he makes the sound Ric Flair does. That's all I want. I'll be more than happy to die by that. Woo! I'm like, all right, let's wrap it up. Let's go. Take me to the woods.
um, yeah, just be careful, where you are in North Carolina, because you start throwing the woos out there. You may get a woo back, and you may not want a woo coming back, depending on where you are.
Oh Lord.
Um,
You got a
um,
place called Erect. I got it. I got it.
but there, Bigfoot. There's the Tulpa theory. Some of my other favorites are interdimensional being. Some of my other favorites are, and this is where my stance as a mystery guy, comes into play. Is that I don't take things super seriously,
Yeah.
and
Well, it's okay to be skeptical, right? Like a lot of
well,
people are.
I like the mental exercise of being able to kind of use my imagination and to try and create a theory that explains whatever this weird thing is. And that to me is the most fascinating and fun, engaging activity. Um, you know, my favorite, with the Bigfoot community, it's just like with the ghost hunting community. There are different sides of it. I am not the kind of person. I am not a skeptic. I don't immediately dismiss everything. I am not a true believer. Like as soon as someone tells me a story, I'm like, yeah, that's it. I like to be kind of just somewhere in the middle, and I like to hear the story and to gather the information and kind of try to formulate some thoughts of my own about what that story is, or what the origin
You
of
just
that
blew
story is.
you just blew my mind with what you just said. Do you understand? I've talked to the barbecue community, I've talked to the hot sauce community, I've talked to the fucking ice cream community, I've talked to chefs, I've talked to some paranormal people, some people that believe in cryptids too. But there's a Bigfoot community out there, and I'm not a part of it. I have my ordained minister's license under the United Church of Bacon. That sounds like bullshit, but I hold that above my college degree, and I'll be more than happy to send you a picture. It took a lot of time to get that. Maryland was not happy with it, but this is interesting because I like knowing that there's people out there that like talking about this type of stuff and I like at least entertaining the idea. It doesn't matter if you have to be 100% in belief of it, but at the same time, it's nice to have this fantasy or at least have this kind of suspecting of maybe there is something bigger out there, because to think so closed-minded that you're the prime thing, you're the top dog, you're the only one here, is so stupid to think that. I mean, for God's
Well,
sakes, we're not that intelligent.
well, you and and my wife would get very angry at me for ever drawing this comparison, but I feel like it's apt that we have almost a large, almost majority of our community that believes in things like uh, God and Jesus, and say, did this man die and then come back? And then the number of people would say yes. Or do you believe in something as much as an angel, and that an angel can affect people? And you have a large portion of people that would say yes. I do believe that does happen. Um, to me, if you can believe, if it's okay to believe in God, or if it's okay to believe in Jesus, or whatever deity it is or deities that you worship, you know, I believe that you can still have faith that there are things out there that are beyond our knowledge, that are beyond our comprehension. Um, and so I don't think blind belief is a good thing. I don't believe blind skepticism is a healthy thing either. I think it's important to have a little bit of both,
Yeah.
and that's where I would come down.
I think I mean, if there's a knowledge or if there's even a hint of something else, or maybe you have a little bit inside of you that's like, maybe there is something to that. I think that's definitely worth pursuing instead of closing it off and just being like, oh, it can't be because of this. I would never do that. I'm so open minded to so many things. I used to be like, what, aliens, what? And then somebody told me maybe we're aliens. And I'm like, how? And then he told me that, all these meteors that hit all these planets out in space, you're telling me some Mars particles didn't fly off into Earth's atmospheres, and maybe that's what we evolved from and turned into these things that we have here today, this substantial life, this life that is somehow so unexplainable that you can only relate it to religion. And I'm like, that's a thought. I'm not saying I'm 100% into it, but I have to entertain the idea because I don't know for sure. And if somebody asked me the answers to the universe, if aliens came to me and asked me all these answers, I only want to know one thing, and it's what I'm going to ask you. Do you like ketchup on your eggs?
Sometimes
Oh, I'm a big no ketchup on the eggs guy. So that's if that, like Kim Jong Il
depends on how good the eggs are. If the eggs are terrible and that the only way that you can eat them is with
is
a little
putting
bit of
ketchup
ketchup.
on. All
Yeah.
right. That's a good answer. I like that one. I'm about to say, because, like, I mean, I'm simple. I feel like if you what's really weird about knowledge is once you start becoming, like, I've talked to so many people, I've heard so many experiences, which has made me wiser, but I don't see that as my benefit either, because knowledge is power, but knowledge is also, it's also good to be, like, not, I guess, aware of a lot of things, there is ignorance and bliss, I would say.
Well, there is, my background is in psychology, and and I also have a little bit of training in philosophy as well. And my understanding is that our perception and what reality is a lot more subjective than what we think it is, and that our brain uh, only allows us to really understand and process a very finite number of things. And that, you know, if our brain tried to conceptualize certain things like the size of the universe, or, infinity,
Or
time, all
Morgan
that,
Freeman was God. Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, our brains just can't comprehend those things. And there are so many things that are beyond our understanding that I think the best that we can do is to open ourselves up to new perspective, new ways of thinking, and to explore however we can the world we live in, because there are so many things to out there that we may never experience, or that we may never see or may never do, but that doesn't mean those things aren't there or they're not real.
Yeah.
um, and I think that's why it's up to each and every one of us to uh, do the best that we can to explore our world and to delve into the mysteries, because we only have a limited amount of time on this earth. And if we don't spend it trying to expand our minds, then
We're leaving a
we're,
lot
mi-
on the table at that
we're
point.
missing out on a lot. Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to end the podcast, Matt. I appreciate you coming out and at least giving me your time to be able to talk and do this today, too, man.
No problem. I love having these conversations.
Now, come on, promote your Instagram, promote where people can find you, just to make sure that people can find your awesome work too if they want to go into anything a little bit more on the cryptid or mystical side.
So I do the Curator of Mysteries on Instagram. That's where you can find most of my stuff. I run a discussion group called the Strange Room through Straight Up Strange Productions. They host a number of different podcasts, so check out their website. And I also do a couple of different designs with my friend Tommy, and there's the curator of mysteries.com, which has got a couple of shirt designs and other things that are sold through a T Public store. One of them is Beards, Bigfoot, and Beer. Another one has the Hopkinsville Goblin, and they're just some fun little things there, and that's just a fun way for us to kind of to share our love of crypto and all sorts of weird mystery lore and all that kind of stuff out there. But yeah, definitely check out those things.
Right on. Thanks so much for listening to this episode Out of the Blank podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode.